I started out as a public worker in 1972 in the state of Pennsylvania. And I was the first kid in my family to be able to go to college. My dad was a Teamster. I was the oldest of 6 kids, and it was kind of the American dream success story, right? You were in, for my dad and my family, and all my aunts and uncles were in the labor movement. They were working people. And because they were in the union, they had health care benefits, they had a decent pension, and they were able to make enough money to be able to raise their families and eventually send kids to school, right? That was the American dream, and that's what the labor movement gave us in this country. So that was my beginning. I got involved in the union probably just like you did, which is when I got there, the workload was incredible. There was no training on the job way back then, and we had these huge caseloads. And I came to public service just like you all did because we wanted to make a difference. We believed in the common good. We thought that we could make a difference by helping our communities by going into public services. Because if you're an IT worker, like the lady I met here, you could make more money in the private sector than you could in the public sector, right? And a lot of the work that you all do, you could make more money if you were in the private sector, but you're stuck in the public sector because you wanted to give back to your communities. And now if you fast forward to what's going on in this country right now, what we see, and there's really two, and I'm so glad that Chuck's here because I'm hoping to learn a lot from him later this morning. But there's two fundamental facts that I would lay out to you about why we're in the trouble that we're in. One is that private sector density is down to 7%, right? So from when my dad was a Teamster in the 1970s, when we had 38% and working people were making enough money, right? We're all the way fast forward to the 7% problem. And what are Teamsters making today? They are not making what they did when my dad worked as a truck driver in a master freight agreement, because that deregulation, anti-union forces have destroyed that. And the second thing is there is no doubt about the intimate connection between the decline in the private sector, unionization, and the attack on public workers. It is because we don't have a vibrant, strong private sector labor movement that public sector workers are being attacked. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, and I think Chuck will probably touch on that as well. I hope I'm doing this right, Patrick. Okie dokie. Okay. When he goes through the economic education, which is pretty stark. But what I'm going to talk about is the shortfalls and what's happening with the budgets and how this crisis in state budgets, in the funding for public services, both at the state and local government, the federal level, is being used, right? But the first impact is, if you look at this, is all over the country, there are incredible shortfalls in state budgets. And I think it's around $180 billion in terms of not enough money to run the states. California being the worst example, we're looking at $25 billion in terms of cuts in the state of California, and that's a very extreme example. Now, and what that means is all the vital public services that people care about and need in their community, and many people don't even realize, right? Because often the work we do is invisible, is threatened, and being cut. And it's being cut at a time when people actually need more help. They need more support and they need more public services. Now, if you look at these graphs, you see that the red is the worst, and blue, which is very few places, is where there's no shortfall. And those are the energy-producing states by and large. And then you go to green, which is not so bad, and actually Massachusetts is in that, right? And that's the state of Massachusetts. Actually, revenues have actually been a little bit better in Massachusetts at the state level than they've had in other places. But for local government, that is not true. And in fact, local government is hit pretty hard by this financial crisis because the states are losing money to cutting aid to local government. And because local government services depend on property taxes and housing values are down, right? Property taxes are down. So local government workers and services are being squeezed. Now we get to how governors and people that are elected by the people who are responsible for safeguarding the common good are actually acting in this crisis. And here's two characters right here. This guy on the left is Scott Walker, the infamous governor of the state of Wisconsin. How many of you heard about him? Boo, right? Let's hear it. Boo. Well, look who's on the right. You know, it's like John Kasich, who is the governor of Ohio. So they decided that they were going to use the crisis in the state, and actually Wisconsin is not in a terrible economic crisis. Their pension fund is one of the best funded pension funds in the country. They decided to try to twist the facts, use the situation to go after public workers, and to shift the blame for the trouble that we're in to public workers, right? And they used that to say that they were going to destroy collective bargaining. But it's a coordinated attack. It's not just those. Here's what happened in November. The state houses flipped all over the country. 26 state houses went from Democratic control to Republican control. 10 governorships went from Democratic to Republican control. And there has been a coordinated attack in terms of their messaging and the work they're doing. So what Scott Walker did, John Kasich and he played off of each other. It boomeranged into Indiana. It's boomeranged into New Hampshire, where we have an attack on right to work. We have an attack on right to work, meaning the elimination of agency fee. We have an attack on the actual collective bargaining law in New Hampshire. And what you see here is that legislation that attacks our right to bargain collectively has happened in every state to various degrees. It's either elimination of collective bargaining, it's an elimination of workers' ability to pay dues to build their organization, to fight for them. It's the elimination of workers being able to use their resources to build political power by making political contributions. Or even in the state of Massachusetts, you're seeing it happening right now this week at the State House on the health care benefit bill for local government workers, right? And it's another kind of twisted way that they came at that problem. Instead of, sure, if everybody was in healthcare together, it gets to what Bruce was talking about, single payer, we would have a much stronger and cost-effective system. But they're using that cost efficiency to try to really eliminate workers at the local government level in Massachusetts to be able to have a say about the type of benefits that they have. And I think I better watch it, but I don't go. So who's behind it? It's corporations, it's banks, these are the people who are funding the politicians who have been attacking collective bargaining, and now those politicians are paying them back. Now, who caused the problem?
Do you have time? Can you just flip back one? Because I had a question.
Sure.
Okay, some of those are like linked, but I'm like Coke is behind Americans for Prosperity. Are linked to them. And what about that Club for Growth? Who's the some of the individuals behind that? Or
oh, that the Club for Growth. It's all about Grover Norquist.
Okay, that guy.
It's the no tax people.
Right.
It's the attack public employee pension. It's like making Republicans sign statements that they'll never be for taxes.
And then what about the top two?
The American Legislative Exchange is it's a think tank that they created. It's more of actually a policy thing. They write the bad legislation, and then they zip it around all over the country so everybody. Right. That's how we get to having the same kinds of bad legislation in various places.